Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a place in Chillicothe, Ohio called the Sulphur Springs Motel. Now this place has got all kinds of folklore, all kinds of just legendary tales, some true, some not true. But we're going to try to cover the meat and potatoes of basically everything about it in a real short summary. So basically it's built in the 1840s. It's very, very popular at the time. Trains were all of the rage back then. So way back then, this place had a sulfur spring that everybody would flock to because it had some sort of medicinal properties, so they thought. But as the invention of cars came along, automobiles seemed to take over, and the train station started losing its way. And as the train station lost its way, well, so did the Sulphur Lake Motel. And as the years go by, it became basically more vacant, till it was abandoned. Now, they sold the sulfur spring water up until the 60s under the guise that it had some kind of medicinal properties. But it closed in the early to mid, 1950s. So ever since then, it's been abandoned. And just like any abandoned building, abandoned mansion, abandoned farmhouse, theme park, anything you can think of, it's going to get basically having people go through it. People's going to show up uninvited, and well, sometimes they're vandals. So this being no different, there's a fire upstairs, half the hotel gets burned, they're able to put it out before it spreads to the whole hotel. And then that basically starts in a path of vandalism that basically goes up until the early 2000s. Now, I happen to know a story about three young guys who in the early 2000s, they go in there when it's abandoned. Now, they go in there between, say, 4 and 5 o'clock in the PM. They basically park down the road because you're not supposed to be there. And they find their way through the woods up into a back door. Now the back door is open, so they didn't even have to break in. They walk in through the back door, and they couldn't believe their eyes because basically this old farmhouse slash hotel has basically just left everything in it inside. And it's mostly authentic to its age. Even the chandelier in the ceiling had the candle holder for it, with a rope going over to the side of the wall so you could lower it and lift it. Now this place was all of the rage back in the day. So people had dances there, they had parties there, weddings there, and it was also a hotel. So just imagine all the walks of life and all the celebrations, and maybe even some of the bad stuff. So there's this piano player in there, there's all kinds of things to do when it was in full swing. But let's get back to the three guys who are in there. They walk in, they see the player piano, it's in disrepair. Matter of fact, one of them even walks over, hits the key, nothing comes out, it's frozen in place, but they can see the scrolls at the top. And right beside the piano, there's also a box of scrolls from where basically when they had a party, they played all kinds of music. So they go walking about the place, and it's around 6 p.m. at this point, and they're making their way around, and they're finally starting to get their feel for the place, about the layout, the upstairs, the downstairs, and they decide to go down to the bottom layer, or around where the dining room and kitchen area used to be, and they decide to have a couple cigarettes, talk about the plans for the night, what they're going to do, what they think might happen or not happen, share a few jokes. Now what they do is they have some smokes, they have some drinks, they have a little bit of lunch, and when I say drinks, they basically were not drinking any alcohol whatsoever. They have a few drinks of water, they've got pop, drinks. Anyway, they have their lunch, they have their drinks, they're smoking, and around 7, 8 p.m., they've almost had their fill of this place in the daytime. So as the night starts to settle and dusk comes about, they notice that the place just starts taking on a little bit of a different vibe. As the sun goes down, they basically start laughing, giggling, making jokes about how they've been there, and they can't believe that all this time they've been there all day and they haven't been caught. They have a plan where if you hear anything like sheriff, maybe the former property owner, really anybody that's other than them coming in, they had a plan to run and hide. even if it meant splitting up. So, they kept that in mind the whole time. Now, as the sun goes down, they're starting to explore the place with their flashlights on only. There's no electricity to this place. It's completely abandoned. And they decide to basically start on the bottom floor. Now, nothing real out of the ordinary in the beginning, but as the hours start to go on in later evening, the place just starts to come alive. Basically, it's now going on midnight. They've been there a couple hours, and they've been upstairs, downstairs. They've heard noises here and there, but around the midnight hours when things really start to intensify, they start to hear footsteps. They start to basically hear door swings. They start to hear people talking, people laughing. They hear music. So we're going to get to all of that. But let's rewind back to a few moments ago where I said they were downstairs starting to make their way into the darkness. Now, they all three have their flashlights on. They're all being really quiet, and they're more or less just walking through the place. They go up these stairs. There's two sets of staircases, so that way it's sort of like you can go up one set of stairs up to the second floor, go down a long hallway, and then there's another set of stairs that takes you back to the first floor. So there's sort of like a spiral looking staircase and a square staircase, and they're at the square staircase. They're making their way up, and they get halfway up when they all of a sudden heard a door slam loud downstairs. All three of them knew they couldn't move because if they did, someone downstairs is going to hear them rummaging around on the wooden steps. So all three of them just stood there. Nothing. Now, they just played it off. Maybe it's a random sound. Maybe it's just like something in the floor, something in the walls, maybe just like made an abrupt sound because the weather's changing, you know. They're playing it off. But it's definitely in the back of their head because this place is creepy at night. So they go upstairs. They're making these just random calls, no really pattern of what they're doing. They're more or less just walking room to room, sightseeing. And what's weird about this hotel is on one side of the hotel, everything is basically authentic to the age and original and in very good shape and yet eerie looking. Then on the other side of the hallway, you can open up doors and there's nothing but fire damage. Some of the rooms you can even see like clear to the outside. So what a weird experience. Now as they're going down this hallway, they can almost see shadow figures immediately. All of them stop. They duck into one of the first rooms in there, and they start whispering to themselves, "Did you guys just see that?" "Yes, I'm pretty sure I just saw a shadow." Now, one of them's always rational, so he's like, maybe it's just like something from the outside coming through the window. But they go down back outside, outside the hallway. They basically start walking down this very long hallway, and when they get to where they thought they saw the shadow, they realized at the end of the hallway there's a window, but out that window there's a house across the street, and there's really nothing out there that's going to cast a shadow, especially on an old country road that a lot of people don't use. So they're already starting to get genuinely just a little bit creeped out, but they're having fun with it because, you know, everything is just sort of happening little by little at this point. Now, as they're going room to room, some of these rooms are decorated from the late 1800s, early 1900s. There was one room specifically that kind of stood out. There was a black iron baby carriage from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and there was a bed to match with a creepy baby doll from that time period on the bed, and it was just basically sitting on the bed with itself fixated at the door so that whoever comes in that room, they're immediately making eyes with that doll. So these three guys had a little bit of a joke. You know, they all want to be macho men. They dare one another to go in that room, flashlight off, shut the door, 3 minutes. Now they do that, and basically you would think that that's when things are going to start acting just a little crazy in this story. But no, not really. All three of them went in there and nothing really happened. So they start making their way back downstairs to have another cigarette. It's that point when they get down to the bottom stairs where there used to be the dining room. They're having a cigarette. They're talking about how long they're going to stay, what they thought they might have heard a few moments ago. But then they hear another door slam above them. Silence. Now, as they sit there in silence, staring at each other once again, and keep in mind that their flashlights are off downstairs. They've got just like this little tiny candle that they said they lit. And that basically just gives you enough like of a light so that you can see each other, and also you can put it out quickly if someone's coming. So they're able to see each other in the dim light, and as they're looking at each other, they hear laughter. Like, not evil laughter, but just laughter like people having a good time. And it's coming from one of the rooms down the hallway. And as they start to hear that, they hear what sounds like an infant crying coming upstairs. So, in true young kid fashion, they dare one another which one of you is going to go upstairs and check that sound out. Now, they all went back and forth, but one of them finally decides to go up there, and to his surprise, there's nothing up there. Of course, there's nobody else in there, so what would be making that sound? But it just seems like every time, as the hours go by, the minutes go by, the later it gets, the house just becomes more alive with sound. Human voices, anything that your mind could muster up, it's almost happening in this sound, or in this house. So, they come back downstairs and he tells him, like, look guys, I didn't really see nothing up there. But then he hears laughing again. He hears a baby crying again. So this time, all three of them grab their flashlights, they go back up the staircase, and they make their way to what basically they think is the room where the noise is coming from. Now, as they get down to the hallway where they want to see where the noise is coming from, one of the doors that they just passed slams hard. They don't know if that's this door that's been slamming this whole time, but what they do know is that door just slammed right behind them. Now, just if you've ever seen a Scooby-Doo cartoon when they're like basically Fred, Wilma, they're all lined up terrified in some haunted mansion grabbing each other's shirt in like a perfectly straight line with a flashlight, just picture three guys doing that. Each one's trying to stay like focused, trying to stay macho, but at this point, all three of them just got really, really creeped out. Now, as if the door slamming ain't enough, they all turn around and the door, yes, is shut. So they open up that door, and it's one of the burned out rooms. There's not a soul in there. So they make their way down the hallway, and at this point, as they're making their way down the hallway, boom, another slam door on the opposite side. Now this time, they are really genuinely creeped the hell out. They're almost starting to contemplate, should we get out of here? Because this is getting really, really crazy. And as they start to contemplate, whispering, guys, we got to get out of here, pretty much they heard the sound of the front door downstairs slam. Now, they are genuinely and just most honestly creeped out. And that's for good reason, because you probably would be too if you were in this situation. Now, remember, we talked about the earlier plan. We hear footsteps, we're going to run, even if it means separating. Now, in a moment of panic, basically all of them scattered like ants. They didn't really have no plan other than to just go hide and try not to be found. So they all three, and the moment they heard that door slam and heard the footsteps downstairs approaching towards them, they all ran in different rooms. Basically some in the closets, some under beds, but basically they just all three hid as quick as they could in pitch black darkness. Flashlights off. Now they're all divided. They're all alone throughout the house, and the house is starting to have its way with them. So each one of them is sitting in there, and they're basically just, when is this going to end? When is the person coming up these steps? Because they hear the footsteps. They heard them come down through the hall. They heard them come up the hallway towards the stairs, and now they're hearing the footsteps up the stairs. They're almost convinced the jig's up. They're probably busted. So you hear the footsteps get closer and closer and closer, but the footsteps get to the top of the steps, or the stairs, and then you hear a door slam. Then, nothing. Now, all three of them are probably thinking, is that someone in here, and they're waiting on us to make a move? So, after 20-30 minutes go by, just imagine that, being in a pitch black, old abandoned farmhouse, no flashlights on, by yourselves. 20 minutes of that. Finally, all of them have like thought to themselves, I need to really make a move, even if it means getting caught. So all three of them start to basically meander their way out of their hiding spots and try to find one another in the pitch black dark. They don't want to make really any kind of noise because they don't want to be basically caught by the person that they think is in there to apprehend them or kick them out. So as they're all basically just wandering through, looking room to room, keep in mind, no flashlights on. They don't hear any more footsteps. They don't hear any more like stairs creaking, none of that. This place is completely silent at this point. So they all three somehow find themselves in the middle of the hallway. They start whispering, we need to get out of here. Now the moment they start whispering to themselves, we need to get out of here, they're basically just discussing how are we going to get out of here, because they don't want to get caught, even if someone is still in there. At this point, they're pretty sure nobody's in there. The place is stupid haunted, but still, they're wanting to be cautious in that aspect. So they come up with a plan quickly. Let's just go down this little spiral staircase. We're going to make our way through the dining room. We're not even going to grab the stuff that we brought. We are just going to get out. But one of them decides, I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab that baby doll. The other two said, man, you're crazy. Because to do that, he has to turn all the way back around and go all the way back where they just came, where all the footsteps are, the shadows, all that. But they can't persuade him. So he goes and does that. He goes and grabs it. He basically catches up with them immediately. They make themselves completely just unrecognizable in the shadows as you could. Like, they are trying so hard to be stealthy. They finally get their way downstairs. They're making themselves down the hallway, you know, and right as they are going through the hallway, they start to hear music. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the story, I mentioned the piano player, and keep in mind, I also mentioned that they tapped the key. Nothing came out of it as far as making a sound. But now, they are hearing the piano playing right down the hall. And it isn't just a few notes. This is like a 6 to 7 second medley. So, they are terrified. They basically run past the piano player. They don't even look at it as they pass it. And they make their way out the back door. And basically all of them admitted that when they left out of that back door, it almost felt like someone was just shoving them to get out. Now, the crazy part of this story is that years later, these people with really good intentions, I have a hard time even grasping this idea, but these people with really good intentions bought the place for next to nothing. They revamped it, they fixed up a lot of things, and basically almost took it back to its former glory, and maybe a little few better amenities because they modernized it in some spots. But now it's a bed and breakfast, and it's a halfway house for girls. I get terrified thinking of those poor girls that basically stay in there night after night. They live in there, and I can't help but wonder if they hear sounds in the middle of the night. I've never really heard horror stories about that place in the modern times era, so I'm not really sure. Maybe spirits don't stay there forever. Maybe the place got revamped and, the spirits moved on. But what I can tell you is that this story is 100% true, because out of those 3 guys, I was one of those guys. Okay guys, so that's the story of the Sulphur Motel in Chillicothe, Ohio. If you remember in the story when I told you that one of those guys took a creepy doll off the bed, well, I was that guy, and this is that doll. If you like my channel, if you like the videos I'm putting up, feel free to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and there's going to be a lot more to come. We'll see you next time.